Welcome to the Cleaning in Motion Show, a podcast interviewing successful cleaning business owners to hear what they're doing that works and what they've tried that's failed, all to help you grow your business. And now, on to the show.
Welcome to the Cleaning in Motion Show, the go-to podcast for insights into commercial cleaning and facility management industries. Today, we're thrilled to have a special guest, Gerald Fong, a visionary and second-time founder who played a pivotal role in Meta, Facebook, or Instagram, spearheading over 500 million in revenue growth through innovative product engineering initiative. His early exposure to the world of facility management through his mother, a property manager, laid the foundation for his keen understanding of the industry. And in this episode, we'll be diving into Gerald's journey, exploring innovative strides he is making with BrightGo, his current company. It's a modern janitorial operating system designed to revolutionize the way we think about cleaning and facility management. So stay tuned to hear Gerald's story. He will give us a lot of insights into how to scale your business, how to retain clients, how to retain customers, and definitely open our eyes to new solutions and technologies that are out there that most of us in the cleaning space are not leveraging. So welcome to the Cleaning in Motion Show, Gerald. Hopefully that intro represents who you are. But if not, I would love to start by telling us a little bit who is Gerald. Tell us a little bit about your background to becoming a CEO of BrightGo. And welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks, Sam, for the warm welcome. Let's see. Yeah. So my background, my story, it began from, when I was in high school, my mom's a property manager. So, after she'd pick me up from school, she would visit different sites. So I got some exposure of what it looked like in the field. A lot of my career, I'd been in the technology and software industry. So led very, very talented engineering teams, also had built a previous company before. And my view from a lot of what's happening in Silicon Valley is that they tend to build really good software, but they tend to build it for people who might not need it as much. And so what got me really interested in this field was seeing the software and technology that janitorial companies were using. It's really powerful. It does a lot of things. But when we spent a lot of time with more and more owners, we started to realize that, okay, it's not very easy to use. It's not as powerful as they'd like. And so that's why we ended up building this business. But anyways, don't want to trail too long on that story, but Sam, go ahead. What would you like to discuss today?
No, that's great. It's good to know that there is someone in Silicon Valley paying attention to this huge world of facility management, which there is so much opportunities for everyone to take to improve the industry and to take it back to where it should be in terms of technology, that I think there is a lot of improvement in every area, So I would love for you, if you can introduce a little bit what is BrightGo and what motivated you to create this company, and explain to our listeners what problems are you solving?
Yeah. So the way this company started originally was we were going out to ISSA, different conferences, and meeting different building service contractors, different owners. And at first we're like, wow, there are so many great software options. You guys must have amazing operations. You must always know where your team is. Everybody must show up on time. We're like, it must be so good. And we asked a bunch of owners, and at first the booths, they all look great. And then we talked to the owners and we interviewed them over drinks, and they started to say, well, it doesn't do this, it doesn't do that. It's really hard to use. There's this problem, there's that problem. And so we started to get this picture around the cracks, the issues that people were having in spite of all of the great options right now. And so what we did was we met a few of these owners and we said, hey, we're really good from technology, from software. I previously have worked at Meta, was leading a significant team there. My CTO, Harvard graduate, was previously president of Harvard Computer Society, led the engineering team for a 150-person company. We're like, we could build better software for you if you'd like. And so we teamed up with a few of those companies, and we focused a lot on the core operational pieces, for example, time and attendance. making sure your people actually showed up, making sure it's easy to use, making sure you can run payroll easily, these key pieces, and it's expanding now to all of operations. And following year we came back, but instead of just walking around, we had a booth. We raised $3 million. We had our customers standing at our booth, sharing the experiences working with us. And so that's sort of the kind of how it went from one to the next. But yeah.
No, that is great, and we'll love to hear more about your customers' experience and how they improve it. No, but before we jump there, based on your research, when you start getting involved in the space and start working on your product, what are the biggest challenges that you saw cleaning companies facing? No, and in your opinion, what are those right now in today's industry? And how are you planning to address those, or how are you currently addressing those?
Yeah. So running a cleaning business is not easy. There's a lot of things about that can go wrong. If we just start at the basics, it's around knowing whether your people showed up. So for example, if you were to ask most owners that, they'll say, yeah, my people are showing up. But then if you ask them, for example, do you ever get a call from a property manager where the property manager says, hey, your person left early last night. They were supposed to stay for this many hours and they were only there for half the hours. The owners would say, yeah, that happens. And so a lot of the industries around, cleaning is it's very interesting to manage because you don't want to, some cleaners are really efficient and they clean really fast, right? And so they get in and get out quickly. But when you start to see that people in the shifts are leaving, halfway through the shifts, that starts to tell you that maybe the quality is dropping. Maybe we should start to do an inspection. Maybe we should start to understand it. And so for an owner to, instead of reacting to a property manager calling them saying, hey, your service was not good last night, how would you like to be proactive to know, okay, there's these trends that are happening in what's happening in the field and have insights and then to take action ahead of time. And so that's basically what we noticed was what was happening in the industry. And also the devil's in the details. If we talk a little bit about payroll for a second, when you ask a lot of owners, hey, how do you guys pay people? How do you guys know they're on site? People will say something like, oh, we have a geofence clock in and clock out system. That's what a lot of people say they have. And then you ask them, what percentage of your clock in and clock outs were edited? They should have a geofence punch, clock in, clock out. But what percentages were modified by a supervisor or somebody said, hey, the thing wasn't working, etc. And we found out that the edit rate in this industry is probably about 20 to 30%. And so you could have the best system in the world, but if 20 to 30% of your punches are edited, then you don't really have a system that's actually geofenced. And so we started to realize, and it's for a lot of reasons. A lot of geolocation is not easy. Building an easy use software is hard. And so for software to actually get you to 95% plus, that's actually geo-stamped, and to know exactly when your cleaners are leaving, coming, so you can then be proactive, that hasn't really happened in the industry so far.
Nice. So basically what you're providing is a solution to manage the workforce in a way that it's more accurate and it's not only trusting what they're saying, but it's also proving, with the technology that they were at the location, that they work for X amount of hours. So if the complaint comes from the client, you have some data to back it up and to at least try to understand what happened, correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. And what insights have you noticed when people start using a solution like this? Like, what happened if I'm a cleaning company, I have 100+ cleaners, I start using your solution, what can I expect? How can I improve my company, my retention?
So the first thing that improves is, so there's a lot of numerical improvements that I can talk to, but I want to talk about emotionally how it feels. The emotional feeling that you'll have is that, for example, our first client, our first customer was a 300-person janitorial company. So it's pretty decent size. We wanted to work with companies that are representative of companies that have scale and that have to deal with what's happening in the industry to some scale. And the biggest difference was it's like an anecdote, which is basically saying I used to get these phone calls where people would say, hey, your person left early, your person wasn't on site. And now they don't get those calls anymore. And so now when they sit down for dinner at 6 p.m., which is when some of the starts are starting to ship, some of the shifts are starting to start, they can just check their phone, know exactly where they are, know guessing, know this, know that. They know everything's like they're on top of their business. And so it's this feeling of the way our customers would describe it, it's a feeling of being in control or being proactive as opposed to being reactive, right? You never want to be on the back foot. We've even heard stories from owners where their cleaners might say, hey, we need more time. We don't have enough time to clean this building. And then they go to the property manager and say, hey, we need more time. Then the property manager runs the swipe data, because property managers have security cameras, they have swipe data, they have all that. And then they say, you're asking for more time, but your cleaners are only here for half the time. Imagine how awkward that is. But that's what's happening in the industry a lot because people don't actually have an understanding. And now, by all means, cleaner, it's a hard job. And I guess I'm only speaking towards maybe that 5 or 10% that might be making, as an owner, your job more difficult. But the other 90% plus are doing a great job. But it's just around understanding that how do you manage your team? It's a hard job. So people do want to leave early when people can. They have personal lives they want to take care of. So I respect it. I understand it. But I think it's just around how do you run a good business and thread that needle. So, yeah.
No, that's definitely a great insight. But and how do you control quality? Like, is there any solution in BrightGo that for those that maybe I don't need an hour to clean and I clean in 30 minutes, no? Which happens as well, and they argue, and we have clients that have those challenges, and they argue that they clean everything great and they didn't need the hour, no? But they're also billing the hour to the client. And any idea how to deal with that situation, which is very common?
Yeah, so I always say the way that an owner should think about the business is they shouldn't be selling it purely by hour, right? Because if a cleaner does a great job, you don't want to punish the cleaner. That's not the right way to do it. However, the owner should know when a cleaner is starting to spend less time than the week before. Because magically, people don't become twice or 3 times better in 1 week, right? I think that's the thing that they should understand. And they can choose whether to do an inspection, whether to have a conversation. So we're not somebody who says, oh, this has to happen or this has to happen. It's more like, oh, as the owner, you'd like to know what's actually happening in your business. And then you can then choose to decide whether you want to, have the conversation, whether you want to do an extra inspection or you want to take certain action. And so it's more around knowing. Because the thing that I hear from a lot of owners is that property managers know more about their cleaners than they know themselves because the property manager is in the building. And so it's this awkward dynamic where they're paying you, but they know what's actually happening. And they're telling you, and you're on the back foot. So it's more around knowing what's happening and being able to take remedies. And of course, if you have the best cleaner who's able to clean in half the time, and you know that if any other cleaner were to be there, it would take them 3 times the time, then you say to the property manager, we do an excellent job. Look, proof is in the pudding. But if you know that the cleaner usually takes a certain amount of time and suddenly it's cut in half, you might want to think about that because sometimes what's happening is they're bringing a second person, right? They're bringing a third person maybe to try to get the job cleaner, get out faster. And that is usually in clear violation of a lot of different rules and regulations, and the property manager is not happy with that. So it starts to just give you understanding of what's actually happening on the ground. That's the key thing. And again, this is to reward good cleaners. Good cleaners, this won't affect them at all. It's more around if there's this sort of behavior that will then lead to your losing your accounts. You want to know ahead of time instead of knowing at the last second. Does that make sense? It's a bit of a nuance there, but this is sort of stuff that we've been learning as we work really closely with these businesses.
No, it makes sense. As right now, I think we're focusing a lot the conversation, which unfortunately is a big pain point on cleaners that they don't do the job the way that they should, no? And at the end of the day, it end up costing the account to the owner, which is painful because I can tell you from the marketing experience that acquiring cleaning contract these days is not easy. There is a lot of competitors. And I think I read it in your website that says that, and I didn't know, but it makes sense that the janitorial industry, it's the #1 employer in the United States. Like they employ around 6 million people are employed thanks to the industry or something along those lines. Not sure if what's your website or no?
That might be a different. There's probably a few numbers that are thrown around, but I know one number. I think it's the fifth largest job in America. So it's a large job, and it's underserved. That's the high level. But
Exactly. That's the point. So I think having a solution that will help with retention, which is a huge pain point that we see in the industry. Again, talking from a marketing perspective, like acquiring a customer can be so expensive, and you have to go through the process of brand awareness, of a sales cycle. You close the client, and then that client should be with you for 3-5+ years. No? And the only way to have that type of retention is to have processes in place. And that's what got my attention from your solution, is that it's part of that process that everybody needs when you get to a certain point and that you need to scale, that will help you, again, not only with retention, but it will also help you with guiding your team to do a better job. Well, as you said, with the payroll, so you can be a little bit more accurate. So what other areas you see BrightGo improving or helping customers? I think I also read something in the website that it can be, so you give a lot of data, no, and a lot of information to the owner that they can potentially even use it for customer acquisition, from sales, for proof of concept. Can you speak a little bit about that?
yeah. So our vision is to be all in one, to do a lot of these pieces. Right now, we're focused on the operations side. So it's really around how do you keep your clients? How do you retain your clients, right? And so it touches these main points, which is, did your people show up? Are you paying them the right amount? And then it goes to other areas like, how are you doing your inspections? Are you missing your inspections? Like which buildings have you not inspected in a while? And from a viewpoint of a COO, or for example, an owner, you want to ask yourself, which of my buildings are green, they're good, which are yellow, and which are red? You'd like to know that right now, right? You might have a portfolio of, say, 200 buildings, 100 buildings. How do you make sure you're spending the right time in the right places? This is the sort of experience you want to give to the owners so that they can keep their accounts and they can spend the time in the most effective way, and build processes around all of this. Because what we noticed is that as a cleaner, as an owner scales their business from, say, 20 cleaners to 30 cleaners to 50 cleaners to 100, at first, the owner does everything. They're kind of like they're the ones scheduling, coordinating, dispatching. They even show up when a shift is when there's a no show, no call, right? That's where but over time you have to transform. And so the way that we describe it is that in the beginning, owners can use something called brute force. You can just will it to work. But at a certain point, you're going to have to create middle management, layers of people, of processes. You're going to have to create systems. When somebody leaves, how do you make sure all that communication doesn't get dropped? You're going to have a system to keep everything in place and working so you can truly scale to then double or triple or 10x your revenue one day. And so it's about thinking about how do you jump from a unscalable company to one that can truly scale and then grow. That's where we fit into the vision of a company and helping them on all the operation side. Eventually, we'll help with other areas as well. For example, with actually running your payroll, actually doing the payroll, actually doing your books, for example, job costing, etc. But we really want to focus and hone on this operations part in this more all-in-one way.
No,
Is that
beautiful.
your question?
Yeah. I think it's a much needed solution. And you talk a lot about time theft, no? And I think people are not aware of the annual cost that can represent to your business. I know you have some case studies that I was watching in your website, very cool. And at the end, of course, you will have time to mention our listener how they can find you, but explain a little bit what is time theft, how does it work, how much can that be costing your clients or the cleaning industry overall, and again, what can you do about it, and potentially how much money can you save at the end of the day,
Yeah. So time theft is basically when you're paying people, but they're not there for the work that you think you're paying them for. I know this goes back to the earlier one, which is, if they're a really efficient cleaner, they're amazing, then that's fine, right? You're okay with that, right? You're paying for the value. But in a lot of other cases, you're paying them to work for 5 hours, but they're only there for 2 hours. And so you might feel like you're getting stolen from, right? You're running a shop and somebody's maybe stealing from the cashier, right? That might be how it feels. And your clients know what's happening too, because they feel stolen from, right? I've even heard some property managers sue the cleaning company because they're like, hey, you're charging me for all these hours, but none of it's actually there. So that's what it is in terms of how you feel. In terms of the numbers, well, let's just do some simple, numbers in terms of what's actually happening. Labor is probably about what 60 or 70% of a lot of cleaning companies' costs. And when we ran a study interviewing a lot of businesses, about 10 to 20% of your wages are going to wages that people aren't even there. So when you just think about your top line, anywhere from 10 to 15% of your top line. So if you're a $1 million business, 100K of it, or if you're a $10 million business, 1 million of it is going to time theft, wage theft, time theft. And so that's something that our solution helps with, because it helps you understand, okay, what's actually happening in your business? How do you actually understand are people actually there or not? And it really irons out those little issues where, this is the thing I hear from everybody. We have a clock in, clock out, but 15% of our clock-ins are, they're edited, right? So you actually don't have a clock in, clock out system at that point. And so we help somebody actually get to 99%, right? Actually have that in place so you truly understand your overall business. But yeah.
Oh, I love it. I think people are so busy in the day-to-day, and so based on my experience, everybody is obsessed on acquiring new cleaning contracts. Very few are obsessed on retaining the ones that they have. And very few others are obsessed on how to improve your margins, no? Like, how can I make more money? And sometimes just by solving simple, let's call it simple, hopefully with your solution, it's more simple. Things like this, you can be, again, adding 10% to your overall revenue, no? So I think for everyone listening, if you're until the interview, pretty sure this is a pain point that you have. The question is how much is costing you and what you plan to do to solve this problem. You know? I was curious. You mentioned that you raised $3 million, no, to start growing the company. Congrats on that. I'm interesting to hear, how do you raise money for a solution in this industry? Because when I'm with friends, even potential investors, and they ask me what do I do, and I tell them that I focus on helping commercial cleaning companies, it's like the most unsexy answer that you can give. No, it's usually like the end of the conversation. But as you know, this industry is amazing. It's billions of dollars industry. I always say that it's the best kept secret in the world, because you would never expect that a janitor can become a millionaire. And there are thousands of case studies that you can definitely look online, or I can mention. No? So I'm curious to hear your journey on innovating in this industry and pitching the idea and raising money. And if you did, maybe to someone that it's already familiar with the industry, or just investors that, okay, what's happening here? I don't know what you're talking, no?
Yeah. So I think a big part of it is I have a track record, right? So this is not my first company I built before. This is the second time I've done it around. So I have investors that have been wanting to give me money. That was just a general topic, right? When I left Meta, my leadership team just all wanted to give me money. This might be a foreign concept for some people, but for me, they're like, hey, whatever Gerald does next, I want to invest in that. So just from my background, from where I come from, I have that kind of that wind coming behind me. But on the other end as well, Silicon Valley is this kind of like feast and famine, right? Certain people get so much software, they get inundated with this tool. And so investors know that. And so from their view, if you're building something that's truly valuable and nobody else from Silicon Valley is doing it, that becomes really appealing. So another way to look at it is that unsexy can actually be very sexy if approached the right way. Like, we had to do the homework to make sure that we were understanding all the kind of challenges about the industry as well. So that's why we interviewed about 300 different people in the industry, in terms of owners, in terms of all these different supervisors, janitors, etc., to make sure we started to have a better understanding. But I think it's very attractive for some people where, okay, there's a space that is underserved and there's nobody like us. I mean, now that we're in the space, it looks quite different now, because like, okay, somebody's actually coming in here building very real, strong software to help the space. So that changes it up quite a bit. But as a founder, as an entrepreneur, I want to go where, my talents are not there at the moment, right? So if there are a bunch of Me Too's or, a bunch of other people from Silicon Valley in this space, it's less appealing to me. But this is a space that doesn't have anybody that that looks like a business like ours with a talent like ours. And so we're really excited, and I think the owners that we're working with are really appreciating it.
No, I agree, and definitely it's a trend that it's very little by little starting, in my opinion, because I have seen amazing solutions that I would never expect to get into this industry, you know, that still years behind in a lot of areas in terms of technology. So it's amazing that people like you are noticing that there is an opportunity, but more than that, that there is room to make things better, no? Without making any commercial cleaning company breaking their bank, you know, with affordable solutions that they can scale and make things better. So to wrap it up, Gerald, what final advice would you have for entrepreneurs, or even better, commercial cleaning business owners, or facility management service providers that are or starting out or are struggling in taking their company to the next step? Any piece of advice based on your experience?
Oh man, there's so much. There's so much. I think it's just a general trend around how, to really grow the business, you have to think about processes and systems. I think that's what I hear a lot from the owners that have made it. They're the ones that have, the $20 million businesses, the ones that, are still at 1 million. It's around thinking about it in terms of systems, processes, like this bad thing happened today. We can fix it. But then it's how do you build a process that never happens again, or that you have the right people watching it, right? So I think that's what it takes. I have a lot of respect though. It's not an easy job. I don't have all the solutions, of course, but that's, I would say, that the big jump that I think owners are trying to make, which is like, how do I not be the one who gets called when somebody doesn't show up?
No, that's great. I think more people have to focus on operation and not necessarily on sales and marketing, because it's impossible to scale efficiently, and make a profit if you don't have the right processes in place. So I appreciate you. Thank you for joining us, Gerald. If for people that are listening and want to schedule a demo and want to see like, okay, like what is this guy talking about? You got my attention. I really want to see what is the solution. What's the best way to get in touch with you or your team and to actually see a demo of the product?
Yeah. To see a demo, just go to our website, brightgo.com, and you can click the see a demo, and then we'll then schedule a time to chat more. Also, feel free to add me on LinkedIn or other places. We'll love to meet people directly in the industry, even if it's to look at the product or to share your feedback and advice. We're very much open to it at this phase.
Cool, man. Appreciate you. Thanks for the sharing your wisdom, your journey, and we'll see you very soon again. Thanks, huh?
Thank you. Really appreciate you having me.
Thank you for listening to the Cleaning in Motion Show. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. In the meantime, find more resources, including more sales and marketing tactics, online at cleaninginmotion.com. That's cleaninginmotion.com. Until next time.